My next guest is Don Goble. Don is an award-winning multimedia instructor at Ladue High School in St. Louis, Missouri. Don is also an adjunct professor for online university courses at Loyola University in New Orleans. Don has published numerous digital media resources for students and educators all over the world. He is an Apple Distinguished Educator and Adobe Education Leader who speaks internationally at conferences, conventions, and provides professional development workshops and webinars. Don specializes in offering educators innovative ways to incorporate video, multimedia skills, and media literacy into the K-12 plus classroom. The National Journalism Education Association named Don as their Broadcast Advisor of the Year 2015. Welcome to the podcast, Don.
Thank you, Dana, so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, thanks so much for being on. We talked a little bit in the pre-chat about your story, about a time when you were in the trenches and how you managed to crawl out. And a lot of it had to do with what made you get into teaching and your life before teaching.
Sure. So, yeah, let's just say I've been in the trenches quite a bit. I feel like I've been in my trenches my whole life. And we all kind of feel like maybe we're in the trenches right now virtually. Yeah. It's been quite a week already for us as we've started. So for me, yeah, my story, so teaching is my third career. And my life changed when my father passed when I was 25 years old. Mm-hmm. And I was tasked with the responsibility after he had a massive heart attack of whether or not to take him off life support as his son. So that and my dad was my best friend. So that in and of itself was a really difficult decision. And what dawned on me when I was speaking with someone after that was, that's really kind of when I became a man. Mm-hmm. At 25, I still felt like a kid, but I became a man. And I made a decision at that moment that, my father always joked with me that if I ever got into sales, my dad was a lifelong salesman for stainless steel. Really not a kind of a thankless job. And he said, if you ever get into sales, Don, I'll kill you. And at the time, I was in sales. I was in a sales job. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to let my dad down. And he's right. So it took me 2 years and an economic downturn in the technology industry, which is where I was working, to kind of push me out the door. And I took a long, hard look and had some reflective time after being a part of a fourth layoff right after literally November of 2001. So just a couple months after September 11th. And I decided I wanted to be a coach. I decided I wanted to get back to my roots of baseball. I wanted to get back to my roots of radio and television. And I wanted to teach what I loved as a high school student growing up and in college. And so that's what I did. I decided to go back and get my dual certification and master's degree, and was told I would not find the job that I was seeking because schools didn't offer that kind of curriculum back in 2001 and 2002. And I said, well, I'm going to figure it out. I'll find a way. And that's what I did.
Yeah. So that's so inspiring to know that, you kind of worked your way out of that sales job and during that economic downturn, during a time where, there weren't that many teaching jobs to be had, that you were able to, pursue your passion and finding, certification in multimedia and technology. Obviously back at, 18, 19 years ago, that might not have been, what every kid was taking, right? But it sure paid off, didn't it? So tell me a little bit.
Yeah, in the state of Missouri, there was no certification in what I wanted to teach. It was the closest thing I could get was speech and theater.
Okay.
And I had taken some speech and theater classes undergrad, but I still needed to go back to undergraduate school and get 12 hours of credit. So I did that at a local community college. I was pushed to maybe get an English certification, but that would have required another 36 hours of undergraduate credit. Yeah. And I was going, look, I've got a bachelor's of science degree from a private university, Bradley University. I've worked 3 years for CBS radio and television. I worked 7 years in the information technology business. And now you're telling me I've got to take like 2 or 3 more years of undergraduate school?
Yeah.
No. I was like, So I found a different route.
Yeah, that wouldn't have made sense because you already had that experience. A lot of the time, the state certification tests they require teachers to do don't make sense unless, some of them actually do take work experience as credit instead of taking the test. So tell me a little bit about your job in, when you started your multimedia job, and then they had a TV studio. They interviewed you about how you were going to use that TV studio that the two teachers ago had used, and how you built your program from there.
Sure. Well, so I was, things kind of happened in odd ways. So where I was student teaching for a speech and debate coach, her husband suddenly passed away, and
Mm-hmm.
she needed a sponsor, an advisor to take the team to Columbia, Missouri to be a part of the tournament. And so I took the team down there, and I ended up meeting this teacher from Ladue High School who had taught there for 35 or more years. She was the speech and debate coach, but also taught a broadcast journalism class.
Mm-hmm.
And she taught a couple of classes, but they had a major television studio that was built by the name by the name of a guy named Charles Marshall. And Charles, back in the 60s at Ladue, was an art teacher. He even taught like jewelry classes, but he was a video junkie at heart. And so over the course of time, found equipment to build a television studio and kept getting more space at the high school to build a fully functional television studio. And so when I was interviewing, the principal said, Don, we're not using it as well as we could be. So we're going to use it or you're going to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I'll use it. And trust me, I'll build a program. And, at the time, there was a lot of digital work, even back in 2005 when I interviewed, that I wasn't trained under, but I said, I'll figure it out or the students will teach me. And that's what we did. So we took it from 2 classes and a total of, I think, 15 students to now, this year I'll be teaching 144 students for the year. And we quickly grew it from 15 students the first year to almost 80, almost close to 90 students in 3 years. And we did that by deciding we were going to be a program, by being something that was going to be recognizable and identifiable and something valuable and that the school could be proud of. And so that's what we did.
Yeah, and that's so inspiring to know how you were able to build up so much interest in that class. And you told me a little bit about when your school was under construction, you even had to move that TV studio to the closet.
Yeah, so there's another, they're back in the trenches. So my good teaching partner, my work wife, Martina Davidson, who I've worked with from day one, and she worked with Charles Marshall. He was her mentor. So she knew the television studio inside and out. And she really trained me in all of it when I was hired. And so back in 2016, our school was going to go under an $85 million renovation. One of the first areas to be torn down was the television studio, and it was going to be about a 3-year full completion. And over the course of those 3 years, we did not have a studio. We literally worked out of a former storage closet right next to the auto shop, which we stopped teaching auto, right across the hall from the wood shop. And they packed in 12 desktop Mac computers. You could barely walk. You could not get in between the rows. But we ended up moving 4 times. We moved from a closet to a lab to another closet. And we had a temporary studio, which was about a 400 square foot former foreign language lab that had a special school district office connected next to it. So we could have a control room and a studio because the school had come to know our video program and morning announcements. And so they wanted us to continue that. But, enrollment sank. I had classes of students of a total of 6 kids in one class. I was surprised that the class even continued. I had to pick up other classes just to fill my schedule, like film analysis and public speaking and personal finance, just to have a teaching load. And those were some rough years, but we always kept saying the light at the end of that tunnel was going to be a brand new, beautiful, state-of-the-art, fully functional television studio that some colleges might envy. And that's exactly what we have. And it's thanks to that our numbers on our enrollment have gone way up. We have digital signage all throughout the school. the school, the faculty and the students love seeing video across the school. They love seeing what the kids are producing and doing. And then a couple of years ago, what really helped as well was part of that renovation. We got a brand new football stadium and softball and a soccer stadium and lacrosse stadium and track stadium. And they put a video scoreboard in it. And they asked me to create a class for students that would create videos that would play during the games.
Wow.
And that drew quite an interest as well. So, it was a really rough, dark 3 years of scraping and clawing and trying to believe that the program was going to stay alive. To now it's beyond thriving. Even in the virtual environment, I have the highest enrollment I've ever had. So we'll have some interesting choices this year to make to teach all of that virtually, but I think we're prepared.
So that's what I was going to segue into. Maybe tell me a little bit about the changes that you're having to make in your curriculum and course offerings, and any challenges that it might go from teaching in that state-of-the-art TV studio to teaching in a virtual environment.
Well, there are a lot of challenges. First and foremost, kids signed up because they wanted to be in that studio. And they wanted to produce videos that the entire community would see. And so that's not going to be possible, at least not for the first 9 weeks here in St. Louis County where I work. We're hoping maybe that we can go back for the second part of the first semester. So that's challenge number one, is keeping kids engaged with something that they didn't sign up for.
Yeah.
The second thing is, we have all the state-of-the-art equipment that they're not going to get to use. Well, now they're going to have to use what they have, which is every student's given a MacBook Air as a one-to-one with our school. And then if they have a smartphone. And so I polled all my kids this week, and out of the 74 that I have this semester, only one doesn't have a camera. Okay. So they all have a smartphone, and they will use their smartphone as their camera. And some cases, maybe their editing tool, or their laptop is their editing tool. And then the other part is, I run my program like a production and a team. I even told my kids that today. We had our first meeting with a new class, and I said, we're really a team. Imagine being a part of an athletic team, a drama, drama troupe, a musical choir, a counseling group, a youth group. That's how we run the class. It's teamwork, and it's by working next to the next person who might have a little more experience and learning from that person and having them motivate you and drive you, and being a part of a collective team effort, because we create a television show and podcasts and a website and all these things. And now we have to recreate that remotely and do it virtually. And what I can tell you is that we will not be able to meet the standard of being in person. I did do some work this summer with some video camps and journalism camps where we had to be virtual. And I do teach online courses for a university, photography and video. And it's amazing how much students will learn. And it's amazing how much they will work collaboratively in a virtual environment, and how much teamwork really does and can occur. And I think there's a lot to be taken away from that, and for all of our teachers and all of our classes, about what they can do if they treat their class as a team environment, a collaborative teamwork in space, even though the space might be virtual.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And kids they're so innovative, especially when it comes to technology, right? So even though they're working all in different spaces, they can edit and they can come up with some great ideas and produce some great pieces for you in your school. And you also talked to me about how your superintendent has used that TV studio during the pandemic shutdown, and how they produced a lot of videos that went out to the community from that studio. And how was that? Did you edit a lot of those videos? Your kids in your classes help edit some of those?
Yeah, so a part of my job is to work for the district communications department. So that means I will produce videos for our superintendent or our communications department. From staff recognition videos to communications. And one of the things that we know that's really important right now is communicating with our staff, with our community, with our parents, with our students, with all the stakeholders. And this was obviously while the COVID hit, and we weren't sure what the summer was going to bring. We certainly didn't know what the fall was going to bring. We are blessed with an amazing superintendent, Dr. Jim Whipke, who is a communicator. He's on social media. He wants to get the message out. He's incredibly transparent. He's incredibly likable. And while he'll tell you that he's not maybe he's not the most comfortable in front of the screen, I mean, he really is. Like, he's just himself. And so I think as a school leader, you need that. And
Mhm.
even if you aren't, you know, and there's many of us who don't feel like we're very confident behind a microphone or in front of a screen. We were early on able to use that studio for communications, and I did edit those videos. So I like that I keep my hand in the production that I teach my students, because I'll never ask my students to do something that I'm not doing myself currently or that I wouldn't do. And so I'm constantly producing and creating like I ask them to do. And so what we'll do now, and what we started last year, was we created a podcast. So we can do that remotely. We just gave him a microphone. We can do that remotely. And quite honestly, he's worked out of his office and done some videos out of his office, and I'll edit those videos for him. And communications has been a really big part of it. And not only that, it's extended to the staff. So a big part of our training before we started school on Monday was, you know, not only running Zoom meetings, but recording videos for our students, short videos for our students, videos to communicate with our parents. And I ended up doing a lot of training for that. I did a lot of that training over the summer. And really what's interesting, you know, while I was hired in 2005 to use a television studio and teach the future broadcast journalists and
Sure.
filmmakers of the world, it was pretty obvious by 2007 that I was training everybody how to be a video producer, because the smartphone came out. And as soon as that came out and was used as a camera, and now it's more sophisticated than ever, you know, the ability to create, and we're creatures of visual habit. And so that's really been a large part of my job as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting to like see the evolution in how, you know, video production has become so much more needed in schools and districts as a way of communication. Tell me a little bit about some of the courses that you've taught to teachers, either in your own district this summer, or what that curriculum at Loyola looks like, and how you've supported educators both locally and nationally this past summer.
Sure. So I adopted online really back in 2006. My first year, I had my students posting their videos to the web, to a website called schooltube.com. It's a St. Louis-based company. It was, you know, YouTube became popular in 2006. And so this was an educational venture to kind of get through the cat videos and the falling off the roof videos and all the other garbage that you can get down in the YouTube rabbit hole, right? While there's tremendous content on there as well, there's also, you can get in the rabbit hole. So we've used this site called SchoolTube for the last 13 years, and mostly it was to host videos. Now they offer tremendous services. They have a service called Watch It, where you can have, any teacher can have, or student can have access to over 200 million assets, videos, and high quality videos and images and music. And so I did some training for them, for English teachers and for social studies teachers, basically to allow kids to create videos in a way for assessment and to show their comprehension, rather than the formative test, you know, the written Scantron test. Another way that I've done it that's just as easy, and SchoolTube has an ability to do it, but so does the phone, and it's basically just recording, like, you know, self-reflection videos. Having the student turn the camera on themselves and tell you one or two things they learned this week, a couple of challenges that they had, some goals or ideas they have for the next week. Because in a virtual world, and even in our own classrooms, when you think about it, you know, you always have a couple of kids who might dominate the discussion. And you always have a lot of kids who might sit in the back or stay quiet, but, you know, their brains are working, and they are sometimes the smartest kids in the room, but they're not the ones to speak up. Video allows you the opportunity to ask every child to record their voice in their own inflection, with their own knowledge. And you don't have to share it publicly. You can share it with just the teacher. And so I did a lot of professional development to encourage teachers to do that, because when I'm sitting in front of 30 faces on a Zoom meeting, inevitably they're not all going to speak up. They may speak up when called upon, but I want to know what they're learning, and I want to know where they are in their learning. And video is a powerful tool to do that. And one way is to just record it and send it to me and let me listen to it. And then that might dictate how I transform my teaching the next day or the next week. So I did a lot of training for teachers that were not tech savvy at all, or had very little technical knowledge. They clearly don't consider themselves video producers. And I try to show them through some very easy, free applications how a phone or a laptop can be transformed into an entire video production suite. and they can look like video producers and sound like video producers and be just as scared as anybody. And I always tell teachers, like being on camera is an adult issue. It's not a kid issue. And when the kids are worried about being on camera, they're worried about being judged by their peers. Not that they're afraid about being on camera. They're worried about being judged. These are the formative years of high school that I teach. But even at the younger ages, the elementary kids don't care. They have such a love for life. They want everybody to see their work. But when you get into middle school and high school, the kids start worrying about being judged. And so, video is another great, skill to have then, to be able to get over that hump, because whether you're going to be a video producer or not, just being able to speak and be able to communicate your ideas clearly can be transferable to anything as our kids grow older. And really so just then more specifically to Loyola, you mentioned, I teach a digital photography class, and it's all tailored around using the phone for pictures. And I teach the basics of photography, but using the phone and some free apps to kind of fix up some of those photos. And then for video too, only using a phone or whatever camera you have to tell stories, the stories of your community, news type stories, personal profiles, and because I was such an early adopter of video and learning online, and I'm very self-taught. I will say, you mentioned in the intro, I'm an Apple Distinguished Educator, and I was very blessed to have that happen in 2011. And it really happened because of my students, and that my students use Apple products and made really cool projects that I got into that program. But through that program, I was able to obtain a lot of professional development. And then I got on Twitter in 2011, and that's been an incredible professional development tool. And I really self-taught myself. I just was like, maybe my mind just works that way, but I always wanted to live in the space where the kids were. And I either wanted to stay a step ahead or at least stay even.
Yeah.
And that's always been my mindset. And because of that, then schools have come to me and said, Don, we really could use your help. And talking to our teachers who are afraid of this, apprehensive, anxious, but unsure how to do it, whatever the case may be. And so I did a lot of training this summer, knowing that we were going to be a virtual environment pretty much across the nation.
Yeah. No, that's so important to have educators like you who are able to give that PD to teachers, and for districts to have somebody who can explain, to the people who feel like they don't know much about technology at all, that, it can be easy to make those videos, but that's the way we're communicating with parents now. And with a lot of our students when we're presenting a lesson, right? If we're doing recorded lessons. So that's really interesting to hear how you received that award back in 2011, and then you built a lot of the curriculum, I guess, from there that you're currently using. Did you also told me a little bit in the pre-chat about some camps that you have been doing, virtual journalism camps as well?
Right. So I've been involved with the Journalism Education Association and the National Scholastic Press Association, two high school, and middle school, Scholastic Press national organizations. And so I did some work for them. They have a workshop that I normally attend in Texas every year, Dallas, Texas, but it was virtual this year, for students who had some experience using video but wanted to expand it. I got to teach with a great instructor, collaborate with a great instructor, Jim McCarthy, who teaches out in northern part of California, and which was great because I got to learn from him. Now, normally he has his own class and I have my own class at these camps, but because we came together virtually, I got to learn from Jim all week. That would have never happened in a virtual environment, and I learned so much from him as he led a lot of our sessions, which was great. And then I did another one, video program that was sponsored by Apple, and We Make Movies, a company out in California, which basically taught kids how to become mobile journalists and tell the stories of our community and use the iPhone and Final Cut Pro. And so we did that, and we had students who with a little bit of media experience, but not a lot. And in the same vein, I got to work with another Apple Distinguished Educator who's an instructor in Chicago. And I got to work side by side with him. And I never would have had that opportunity if we wouldn't have been virtual. And so, and I got to learn a lot from Steve Douglas is his name. I got to learn a lot from Steve. He has a whole program of ideas he gave me. And so it was really amazing how much students were able to achieve in a virtual environment. And then they would go out in their community and they would film stories, right? So through social distancing and wearing masks, they were able to capture and tell stories through our instruction by using just their phones, really at both camps. And because the phone really has become the most powerful camera that any student can have. And if you poll most of the kids across the country, a lot of them have some kind of hand-me-down or a brand new one or some kind of tablet or device that will record video or take a picture. And that's kind of the beauty, I think, of where we're at right now in virtual environment, where we can ask our kids to create in ways that we've never been able to ask them before because they all have a device in their hands, or at least many do. Not all of them, but many do.
Yeah, gone are the days where you have to check out cameras and equipment and, you know, inventory everything that students return back to your office, right? So you told me a little bit about also for your district that you're developing curriculum for PK through 5 as well, and that may not be your specialty, but how have you developed some PD for teachers that teach the elementary grades?
Yeah, so that was really interesting. So I had done at this journalism workshop, I worked for some advisors basically on distance learning strategies to engage students. And when I looked at it, it was tailored around media teachers. And I was like, you know, this could really be expanded to other teachers. But my idea really was, I thought like middle school through high school, ways to kind of engage middle school and high school kids. Because that's really all, that's the age that I have a son who's 14. So the last 3 years has been spent in middle school, and I know all of his friends and I kind of get how they learn, and I've taught 9 through 12. But so I offered it to my district, and lo and behold, we had over 100 people sign up, and many were pre-K through 5. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know the technology, but I don't teach that grade level. I'm not sure, but I was like, you know, at the heart of it, what I've known the last few years is that our pre-K through 5 teachers are some of the most innovative teachers in the world.
Yeah.
And they're more risk takers than our middle school and high school teachers are with technology. And so I thought, well, shoot, they can do this just as easy. So I had to do a little more research, though, to kind of dive into the younger brain. And I really just said, you know what, here are some approaches, strategies, and tools. You'll know your kids better than I will. But here are some strategies, if you use these tools, I think will work for you. And I'm a big researcher. I love researching. So I try to go out there and really, because I'm big into media literacy and what's credible and what's not. So I spent a lot of time on that. And it was really fantastic, the feedback that I got. And I think it's because, again, our pre-K through 5 teachers are some of the best innovators in the world because they are not afraid to take a risk. Just like that age group of kids, they are the most creative ever. And the older we get, the more standardized testing we get, a little less creative we get, right? And that's really been my thrust, is to pull that creativity back into that 6th through 12th grade and now really beyond into higher ed too, because higher ed is behind that creation and getting away from the lecture and offering the individual student a chance to create in a way that shows their voice, that shows their knowledge, that shows their comprehension. And if it's a video or a picture, you know, not expect it to be something that I'm going to pay a streaming fee for Hulu or Netflix. But really look at it. Can I see it? Can I hear it? And does it make sense? And if you hit those 3 marks, then I think you've really offered a student a great opportunity to learn in a new way.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear how, you know, that's true. We tend to, you know, kind of put up our guard as secondary teachers, right? And you know, elementary, I think the teachers mirror a lot of the students because the elementary students aren't afraid, right? They don't have those hangups that a lot of the secondary students have. So, well, it's been so interesting hearing about just kind of the voyage through your career in media literacy and how that's changed throughout the past 15 years or so, and just how you're able to, you know, give PD to teachers in this time of need where everybody's you know, learning a lot more about presenting via video and tech than they would have otherwise used. Out of everything we talked about on the podcast today, what's one thing especially you'd like listeners to remember?
I think the biggest thing that I'd like listeners to remember is this, and I take this from some research that Forster did back in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
and I use it in my presentations as well. It's about brain research,
Mm-hmm.
and that we take in visuals 90 times more than we do the text, and we process those visuals 60,000 times faster than we do text. And so when I have teachers tell me, oh, Don, you have the fun class, because they're playing with videos and doing all this stuff. And we make really valuable educational videos. We're not making, like running out in the hall and silly, videos. And I think it's because kids feel successful in my class because they're able to visually show their knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so my challenge to anybody listening would be to find ways to introduce the visual platform for your students to express their knowledge, whether it's video or through a photo, or whether it's digital or whether it's drawn. And as the instructor, to offer more visual and video instruction and I'll give you one other thing too, not only the visual, but in this virtual environment, one of the best pieces of feedback I've received from my online students at Loyola was the feedback that I give. And the feedback that I give is through audio and video. And they said it's the best feedback they've ever received from a college professor. And I thought about that and I'm like, why? Why is that? Well, because they don't see me. I'm never on campus. They can't come visit me.
Yeah.
But they can hear my intonation and my enunciation and my voice and my positivity and my areas of instruction. Whereas if I only give written feedback, where does the student mind go? Directly to what they did wrong.
Yeah.
And through audio and video feedback and through visual representations, our students can really further gain, I think, a deeper understanding of their own knowledge, of ways to learn. And our kids are visual learners. And I really hope that that because of this virtual environment, that it will disrupt education enough that it shows the value of not having to stick to standardized tests in order to learn how much students know.
Yeah, no, I think that's great to kind of end with, because we want this to be a disruption. We want this to be a wake-up call on how to assess students, right? And the fact that you're talking about that virtual environment that you're teaching students in, the online courses at Loyola. I did my doctorate in virtual online, and I rarely talk to my mentor on the phone, right? But it wasn't like they ever gave you feedback via video or audio. So I think anybody who teaches, online at some university, that's a good thing to keep in mind. Give audio and video feedback to your students. Well, where can people find you online?
They can find me at dongoble.com, DONGOBLE.com. All of my resources on there are free. I've not created them all. I'm a big curator as well. So I'm not afraid to curate and leverage the professional learning network that I have. So when I find good material, I put it on there. A lot of it's journalism related and media related, but a lot of it is not. And so I've recorded podcasts on there as well, lesson plans, activities, grading. There's so much on there, and it's all free. I mean, we're all in this together. I'm not out there to make a buck. So it's out there for free. Download it, customize it, take it for what you want. I'm on Twitter at dgoble2001, DGOBLE 2001. 99% of what I tweet is media literacy, video production, journalism, or sharing my student work. I am a huge advocate for sharing my student work and sharing out their links. And then you can also find me on Instagram at dgoble2001, where that sometimes is a little more personal, but I also post some professional work on there as well, especially when I attend conferences or work with other teachers to kind of give a glimpse into the workshops that I do. So I really appreciate the time today and the chance to connect with you and your audience.
Well, it's been great having you on the podcast. Have a great rest of your day.
You too, Dana. Take care and have a great year.